Hello, everyone. You're listening to Michelle Speaks on 180radionow.com, currently heard in over 128 countries around the world, and I'm your host, Michelle Portier, founder of Healing Women, Healing Nations of Northeast Florida. We live in a society that condones living behind masks, hiding who we are and the issues we face, some too taboo to discuss with anyone. You may be worried about being judged or ashamed of what others may be thinking of you. Michelle Speaks not only uncovers it, but we look for solutions to deal with it head on. Stay tuned as we get to the heart of the matter, because if you hide it, you can't heal it. Welcome to Michelle Speaks. If you hide it, you can't heal it. I am Michelle Portier, your host, and on this episode, we are going to continue the conversation with Mr. Anthony M. Butler. Last week, we spoke on sex and intimacy deal breakers. This week, we're going to focus on sex and intimacy deal makers. What exactly is a deal maker? Compromising in the relationship to sustain it. Compromising on the things that you may like or dislike for whatever reason. You know, whether you feel like you need to do that to sustain the relationship, to make it work, or whether you feel like you have no other options. So we're going to get right into it. Mr. Anthony Butler, welcome back, and thank you so much.
It is good to be back. Good to have made it this far.
Good. So that's an inside joke, but anyhow. So we want to get right into it. Talking about deal makers.
Right.
Compromising in relationships, and we kind of touched on that in last week's episode. We talked about, compromising really is going to come back and bite you.
Definitely.
It's going to cause some resentment, some, deep-seated.
Somebody's hurting.
Right. Yeah. Hurts, and which will turn into bitterness, and however.
Right.
It's eventually going to lead to the end of the relationship. So what are deal makers?
I think there are two sides to deal makers. I think one side of the deal maker is that person that accepts a situation that they're in, that they know deep down it's not right for them. Even in the beginning, they get a sense of just something comes across like it's not quite right. You know what I mean? That's the one side. So somebody may say they're a victim, but they're not necessarily a victim if they choose to allow it to happen to them.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's one side of it. The other side of it is those people that create deals in the relationship, either knowingly or unknowingly.
Right.
And they expect that deal to live in the relationship. And I think sometimes they know they're making that deal knowingly. They want it. They feel that's the way it should be. It's got to be their way. And I think sometimes they don't know. It's just the way they're conditioned. It's just the way they've been brought up. And what hit me just now is some people adopt the deals from other relationships and bring them into their new relationship.
Wow. And so if that were the case, bringing in other things from previous relationships.
And not the same as baggage now. I'm not talking about that.
Not baggage. Yeah. But adopting whatever was.
You adopt a mindset that somebody. Look, if you've been with somebody for 5, 10, 15 years, they rubbed off on you, you rubbed off on them.
Well,
and if you expected certain things that you settled for, or certain things that you expected from your partner, and you walk into the next relationship expecting the same thing, and it's not realistic, well, there's a problem there. There's a problem. If somebody was in an abusive relationship and they were the abuser, and then they figured, well, they got away with it in this relationship, so the next relationship, they can get away with it again. Or if they've been abused and they got to the point where even though they were out of the relationship, they didn't deal with the abuse itself. So now they get into another relationship where the person starts bit by bit doing some of the same things.
So there's the residue.
Yeah, there's a residue, and you attract what you live in a way.
Say that one more time.
You attract what you live.
Right.
So if you live in an abusive type of mindset, you attract abusive. We talked about that, how certain people will always have that girlfriend or that guy that have the same type of person they always deal with. Right. Why I get that type of person? It's because that's what you exude. So if you exude that you are cool with being abused, you're probably going to get a lot of people that like the abuse, that the wolves can sense the sheep.
Wolves in sheep clothing.
I mean, but they can, a predator knows prey.
Huh.
And so if you're walking around for a certain mindset, and that mindset is a mindset of lack, a mindset of low self-esteem, a mindset of, oh, I'm not really worthy of anything anyway, so whatever I get, I'm cool with.
So with that being said, then the relationship really is doomed from the start. So then how?
Well, that's what we're saying, though. If they're a deal maker,
right,
the relationship could go on for years. In other people's eyes, it's successful. You're together. You know what I mean? But is it really a success if the two parties in the relationship are just not happy with each other, but they stay together anyway, just to say that they're in a relationship? I mean, I know some couples, they're together and you say, well, why are you together? I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know why we're still together. I mean, they don't stay in the same rooms. They don't do the same things together. I mean, the only reason they're a couple is because they share meals every once in a while, or they got a bank account together. But
so in that type of a relationship, is there even any sex or intimacy? I mean,
well, I don't know. I mean, haven't bought that ticket to try. That ain't the one that I want to see.
I mean, I'm not saying for you personally.
No.
I'm just
I got what you're saying.
Question out there.
No, honestly, I think that it could be, but whatever's there is jaded. And I think people can feel that, people know that, and the people that care about them can sense it as well. And when we're talking about the side of sex and intimacy, when people get into a relationship where intimacy is not there, but they settle for it being not there, some people feel like the only way they can get intimacy is through sex, because they don't understand what we talked about last episode, that there's a difference between sex and intimacy. If you are a person that starts to understand what you're worth and starts to really understand that if you're worthy, then the relationship is worthy. And that means the other person has to start acting like it's worthy, And that's if the other person is the one that's causing the deals to be made.
Well,
but if you're the one causing the deals to be made, maybe it's time for you to say, let me stop co-authoring these deals. We talked about co-authoring our own books. Some people, they're co-authoring tabloids. So, they live in drama, they stay in drama, and they don't exist without that drama.
So they become conditioned to that.
Yeah, it's their conditioning. If you in a smelly relationship, at some point in time, you don't notice the smell.
Well, the smell is still there.
It is still there. If you ever had a friend that you said, boy, you need one more minute in that shower, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? So you say, I don't know what you're talking about, brother.
Right.
That's because you're not downwind.
Right.
But, you got to approach things in that way. And as I thought about this episode, I really thought about deal makers coming from a certain frame of mind. For one, that whole bargain mentality. What are you shopping for when it comes to sex, intimacy, relationship, companionship, whatever you want to label it as? Are you settling? Are you walking into it settling? I'm only worthy of this, and so if I get anything more than this, I should be happy.
Right. So I mean, something you touched on in the last episode, because it all, as we were going back and forth, you said it all goes back to communication.
Right.
So going into it, you've already really set the parameters, because if you have not talked about what you need sexually or what you need as far as intimacy, then you've already effectively made the deal. You
have. And then the other side of it is just to be true to that thought about communication. There are some people that communicate, but what they communicate is not what they really want. That's one thing. You say you want it, but then when you get, for instance, I can be very direct, blunt, sometimes to a fault. And sometimes it's a problem, honestly. But I run into a lot of people that say, just tell me the truth. Just tell it like it is. But then when you do. And then when I do, well, I said today to someone, people don't mind you telling it like it is, as long as what it is what they want. You tell them what it is, and it's not what they want to hear. Right. Now they like, why you talk like that? Why you got to say things the way you do? But when I was saying things that align with what you wanted to hear, yeah, a problem with how I said it. You told them, baby, go ahead, say that. You know what I'm saying? There's a mindset that goes in that. So the communication part, it is important.
But you have to really be truthful.
And what are you communicating? And the person that's hearing that communication, what is it that you really want to hear? If you hear something that's not matching you, then don't go with it. And I was guilty of both sides of that. I think one of the things that I've gotten out of this process here is that the transparency is even cathartic for me.
Right.
I've been in where I've communicated incorrectly what I thought I wanted. Another aspect of it. Am I communicating what I really want or what I think I want? How much have I given thought to what I want? And then you hear what I'm saying?
So it's not just about knowing your worth, it's knowing yourself. Know thyself.
Know thyself.
To thine own self be true.
People see me say that all the time, hashtag know me. But I couldn't say that until I got past the hashtag know thyself.
Right.
If you're communicating what you want in a relationship, sex, intimacy, companionship, all those things, and you're saying the right things, then it's up to the other person to decide from their angle, is that what I want?
Well, that other person might not always be being truthful either, because as you stated just a few minutes ago, I have been on both ends of the spectrum as well.
Exactly.
And I guess I've retrained myself because I've always been told from a young age that I need to learn diplomacy and tact when talking to people. So I try to say things in a way that's not hurtful, but still truthful. And sometimes in doing that, I'm not being true to myself and not really communicating clearly. So,
and that's when you're making a deal.
Exactly.
And I think people out there listening, keep in mind that we're not just talking about deal makers with others. Sometimes we make deals with ourselves.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and settle and put up with this because I need somebody in my life. I'm going to go ahead and deal with this because it's the only way I'm going to have that woman or I'm going to have that man. And
so would that lead into like seeking validation from a man or a woman, or is that a whole nother topic?
It could be another topic, but I'll speak from my standpoint. And I said last time, I used to thrive and need a sense of value, a sense of appreciation, a sense of acknowledgement from the person I was with. And
you said used to.
Yeah, because I've worked through that.
Okay.
I think for the most part, I don't need it as much.
Okay.
And for me, E3 was a big part of that, helping me create that. I really created that environment for myself. But even in E3, the organization that I run, I found that I was even falling prey to it in there.
Okay.
And I had to get to the point where I said to myself, I have to stop worrying about other people validating me. And I have to just understand that I'm worthy. And once I started to get that, then I started to say it to other people. But I couldn't say, Michelle, you are worthy, or John, you are worthy, or, Dorothy, you are worthy, until I could say, Anthony, I am worthy. And we have to do that even on that intimacy sex level. I'm worthy of being treated a certain way. I'm worthy of getting the attention. And I'm leaning more toward the intimacy than the sex piece today. I really think it's all about how do you get that special connection with somebody? And how do you make sure that they understand what you need and how to give it to you? One of the best things I got out of one of the worst relationships I ever had in my life was learning about love languages.
Okay.
But, it's amazing that I did not know what love languages were.
Really?
And I didn't. I'd heard it mentioned, but I understand.
So you read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
I actually read it online.
Okay.
I did. And it's funny that as I was reading it, like I said, I was in this relationship that was just terrible, but that was a good that came out of it. So now I understand. I know for a fact what my love languages are. It's for me, it's touch. And wow, you got to find out the other one. I ain't giving that all the way.
You can't give it all the way, right?
No, but
you got to work for it.
But I understand it now, and I understand now how if you understand that love language of the other person, and at least seek to understand it, and work off of that knowledge, apply that knowledge, it makes everything different. I apply love languages in my business world. I start to intuit what that language is for the person. Now, somebody's saying, well, you mean love languages in business? No, I'm not talking about I fall in love with each business, but I do start to understand what each entrepreneur needs for themselves in that business, whether it's, acknowledgement, whether it's me recognizing their gifts, whether it's tangible quality time. Some of them thrive off of strategy sessions,
Well, even in business, businesses are still based off and founded off of relationships.
And the person.
Right. And in being able to relate to that person, that creates a sort of intimacy. Not,
exactly.
Not in a negative connotation,
No.
but just, yeah.
Yeah.
But in that, learning to speak to the other individual in their love language versus speaking to them in yours and expecting them to respond.
Yes. And I think it crosses over both sides. I said before I was much better in business than I was personally, but I have gotten much better personally now. I'm going to be a catch for somebody.
Well,
but at the same time,
you guys heard that right.
But I've also gotten better with business because I'm understanding that it goes both ways. And for those out there thinking to themselves, well, maybe I need to rethink it. Maybe you do. I think that's the first step of understanding.
That's okay.
It is definitely okay. It is okay to understand you may not have it all figured out.
Well,
and just because you're in what is looked at as a successful relationship, if you don't feel it, then it's not.
Exactly.
I mean, other people can say you're so happy, you're so this and that, but I was telling somebody the other day, regardless of what type of storm you're in and what I see from it, it's your storm.
Exactly.
So if you feel like you're in a storm, you're in a storm. So
and as you were talking, I was just thinking about how relationships that go bad, and a lot of their relationship status has been posted on social media. And so people will post, well, I didn't realize you guys were having issues and this and this and that. I mean, what's posted on social media is not, what's always true in relationships. And so you can't make a determination based on that.
Yeah, you can.
A relationship is between two people. And so I think, and I know this is going off topic a little bit, but I think that relationships, it just shouldn't be posted on social media.
Well, see, I don't think that's going off topic at all. I think you're hitting a point that needs to be understood. Being intimate with your relationship means keeping your relationship between you and the person.
Exactly.
I mean, you're attacking your intimacy when you start to share it on social media. And I'm not talking about you going out to get ice cream with somebody.
Right.
But I am talking about
intimacy.
Yeah, but remember what we talked about was intimacy. Intimacy could be that you took a quiet walk on the beach with somebody and y'all just had an amazing moment. Well, if you had this amazing intimate moment
and you posted it,
why is your first inclination that, let's take a picture and put it on Facebook? No, this is our intimate moment
between you and I,
specifically unique to you and me. That is what intimacy is all about. The minute you put it out there for everybody to witness it, it is no longer intimate.
Exactly.
And I think that's what social media has done. It's made people fall into that trap of what to share and what not to share. They just share everything.
Well, those lines have been blurred or, eliminated altogether, I believe. Just my own opinion.
But you know what? If you didn't have social media, everybody that has ever been with friends that date, there are some friends and you see them, they're a couple, and they're like making such a show of being a couple.
Right.
That's just like that person that posts everything on Facebook before Facebook. And then there are others, you see them, you say, wow, they're so cool. And you say, they're married. Oh, I didn't even know they're married. I just thought they were really good friends because they don't post everything.
Right.
And, they don't broadcast everything. So whether you're doing it through social media or through interacting with your friends or the public, you don't have to broadcast your intimacy.
And, I believe that's true because honestly, and I don't know if you've experienced it, I've seen couples where they're not overtly displaying it, but you can tell there's an intimacy between the two.
Yes.
And so I don't feel that it's something that you have to broadcast or attempt to broadcast or attempt to display.
Yeah.
It's something that just comes naturally.
It is. And I can I'll give a shout out to Darlene and Lawrence Robinson out of Orlando, Florida. They are two members in E3, husband and wife for years. When they're together, they not all up on top of each other and this and that, but you can tell there's a deep, abiding love between the two of them just by the little things. I watched one time that Lawrence was eating something and he got a crumb on him. And in the midst of him talking, Darlene just went and kind of just knocked it off and
Right.
made sure he looked all right. And she didn't do it in a obtrusive way. She didn't do it in a way that made him feel like he did something wrong. And he even kept talking. I don't even think he realized she did it.
Probably
But
didn't.
all I saw was, wow, they're so in tune.
Yes.
And she's so, she did it just unconsciously. And that's the type
It's
of
second nature.
That's the type of intimacy I would want for myself, or I would hope that people I care about have.
Right.
Intimacy that's unconscious, unconscious intimacy. You don't even realize how intimate it is until
just
somebody, you're right, somebody points it out and says, "Oh God, it's so great the way y'all did that." And your response is, "Really? I didn't even realize we did that."
Wow.
Yeah, that's something to aspire to, you know, and that takes time. It takes an understanding of everyone. And there's a song, Picture Perfect. Nobody is picture perfect when it comes to their relationship.
That is so true. Say that again.
Nobody is picture perfect when it comes to their relationship.
Not intibati.
Nobody. And the person that says they are, they just got more bones in their closet. You remember Eddie Murphy say, "You open your mouth, a bone fly out."
That just means I got more work to do.
Exactly. So, but I think intimacy comes in a lot of different levels. And when we're talking about deal makers, getting back to the deal makers, are you allowing yourself to feel a certain way because you feel it's going to keep the person for another day? Are you allowing yourself to feel a certain way because you're going to keep that person for one more day?
That was a loaded question.
Yeah, and that's what comes up, I think, when you're thinking about, am I a deal maker? Or have I allowed myself to have a deal made on me? Because if you're feeling a certain way and you're finding that it's an effort to be happy, you've made a deal in some area.
There's a problem.
Well, there's something that's going on. You know, it may not be a problem as far as like bad. It just may be a challenge of something that hasn't been really said.
Or something that needs to be addressed.
Exactly.
Okay.
I just shared off, before we started here about a gentleman that reached out to me saying that after hearing the interview, he realized that he had some issues with his relationship and the way his fiance was reaching out to him for sex was very coarse. And although it seemed exciting initially, it became something that not only was unfulfilling to him, but it started to make him question what her level of intimacy was with him. And after hearing the interview, he listened to it with her. And once they had a discussion about it, he said, to me, for the first time in his over a year engagement, they actually made love.
Wow.
That's huge. He realized that he was a deal maker because he made a deal with himself that he would accept the way she was talking to him and the way that she was approaching sex. And she didn't even realize that she was a deal maker because she was telling him, this is how we're going to do it. And it was a flip because usually it would be the woman to be in that situation and the guy would be the one creating that. And he said he didn't feel comfortable he didn't even realize he had a potential issue until he heard me talking as a guy about those issues. So this show is doing exactly what we hoped. It has done it. And you guys, that's a blessing. It's being a blessing.
That's good stuff. And that's really what we want to do. That's the whole, premise behind, Michelle Speaks. If you hide it, you can't heal it.
Exactly.
Because unless and until you're willing to have the conversation, nothing changes until something changes. And
sometimes you don't realize anything is hidden until somebody else shows you what they had. You don't even realize it's hidden in your world.
Right.
And
that is true. Because I believe I shared with you offline that I realized that even in the interview last week, that my eyes had been open to some things that I had just not addressed and didn't even realize that it was an issue.
Right.
So, the Michelle Speaks. If you hide it, you can't heal it. It's not just for my listening audience. It's for myself. It's for, you, Mr. Butler.
Everybody.
It's for anybody it's for everyone.
Yeah. Because we're all making deals.
Right.
Every day we're making deals with ourselves. And that was one of the key points. It's not just deal makers with the other person. Are you settling for less than your individual best and your collective best? Are you taking the time to say, this is what I want, this is what I deserve to receive, and this is what I'm worthy of giving. And if you're not, why? Why not?
And then you need to think about, if you're not able to verbalize that, what's preventing you from being able to?
Right.
Are you afraid to ask for what you really desire and what you want? Or
no, are they afraid they're going to lose the person?
Right.
Because usually when people don't talk about something, the real reality is they're like, I don't want to lose him. He's a good man, or I don't want to lose her because I can't get somebody else. It really is that sense of lack, that mindset of lack. Like if you do something and lose them, nobody else will be coming.
Wow.
And I had to flip the script for myself and say, not only am I willing to lose that person, but I'm willing to open up the door and let them out. You know what I'm saying? Because
let me escort you out.
Well, because I understood. And we just talked about that. You were saying how, you're working on your walls and bringing the walls down.
Right.
And I said, sister, don't bring your walls down.
Right.
Just build a couple of doors in your walls so that the people you want to let in can come in and the people you need to get out can get out.
Right.
So if you're going to be intimate in your relationship and you want to avoid deal making, make sure you outline in your own mind what deal you will accept. What's the deal that you're willing to have in your relationship? What is it that you're willing to have when it comes to communication? What is it that you're willing to have when it comes to sex, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to feeling important? Will you settle with somebody making you feel special once a month? Or do you need to feel special every day? And is what you're asking for realistic? Okay. You can't say, I want to feel special every day, and you work with somebody that travels.
Well,
you understand
that's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah, but we don't think about those things. Baby, I'm gone 2 weeks out the month. And then 3 months down the road, you're saying, well, half the month, I don't even feel like you love me. I'm on a plane.
Right. Well, that's where therein, I guess, where you would want to talk about, whether or not you want to have a relationship with somebody that travels, or even have a long distance relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
But I mean, that's just an example that all those little things that
matter.
If you know it matters to you in the beginning, make sure it's clear, because if it matters in the beginning, it's going to matter later on. And if you make a deal with it and you say, oh, baby, we can do this anyway. All right. Unless you both agree, and I'm big on this middle ground, I can do a long distance relationship as long as I'm with somebody that says, I understand what a long distance relationship means, and this is what I'm willing to receive. And if you're able to do this as well, we can make this work. I'm not against a long distance relationship. I'm for it. I'm not against a short distance relationship. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I believe, I've heard this question asked, well, can people do a long distance relationship? Yes.
Yes, they can.
If they're the right people for each other and they communicate what they expect and they manage those expectations. I was just talking the other day about managing expectations, eliminate waste, add some focus and reward effort. And if you apply that to intimacy, it's the same thing. Manage your expectations on what intimacy is for you. What is it that you want to see from the other person? And what is it that you're able to give of yourself? Because some people want certain things that you just aren't able to give. And maybe it's because you don't know how to do it. You've never been expected to do it. Or some people don't want to do it.
So in the case where you don't know how to do it, or you've never been expected to do it.
Right.
Not you per se, but just asking the question from the audience's point of view. Would you be willing to show the other person or help the other person?
I think you have to.
Right.
I mean, if they don't know, they don't know. How are they going to know unless you show them?
Right.
What does that intimacy mean? It may be that I don't want to have sex all the time. Just hold me. You hear that in the TV episode. Baby, I just want you to hold me. But that's intimacy. That person is saying out loud, that's not what I need.
I don't need the act.
I need I need the act of you holding me.
Yeah.
Act of me. What is the act I need? Do I need the act of sex? No. Do I need the act of holding? Do I need the act of listening? I mean, what gets somebody so into another person is they always listen to me. That's one of the first things people say. I feel like when I talk to them, I can just talk to them for hours and they pay attention. They always listen to me. And what's one of the first things somebody says when they're out of it with somebody?
He doesn't listen.
She doesn't listen. He doesn't listen. I feel like I'm talking to a wall.
I feel invisible.
They don't understand me anymore. But in the beginning, everybody understood everything. You talk 3 languages. I understand you, baby. You know what I mean?
Well, that was the honeymoon stage.
Yeah, but you know what? Yeah. Why does it have to be a honeymoon stage? Why can't it just be a honeymoon way? You know, why can't you, if you realize that's what the person really likes?
Well, it can be. We talked about that being the co-author.
Yeah. So, you know, and talking about that compromising, do you compromise on when that first time they show you a sign they not listening the same? Mm-hmm. Do you say, well, I know he's busy and he's got a lot going on, so I know once things settle down, he will listen again. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't realize he's not listening. Mm-hmm. Maybe he doesn't want to listen. Maybe you're not saying the same things that he used to listen to.
Say that again.
I mean, sometimes if what you're saying changes, it may not be resonating the same way. Gotcha. So I think there's always 2 sides to it, you know, in regards to whether we use the pronoun of she or he. You always have to look at, it's not just what you're saying. It's not just a deal that you're making. Mm-hmm. It's whether the other person is also making deals. And if you can get out of making deals with each other and be real and allow it to grow together. If we make a mistake, I'd rather make a mistake and say, hey, that's not the right deal. Mm-hmm. I'm not down with that. Right. That's fine. Okay. Not there, not that way. Not this time. Okay. Then now we got something that we can build on and grow on.
So do you think that social media has affected intimacy in relationships?
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, I see people that get offended because somebody was posting at a time when they felt they should have been giving them a phone call.
Oh, wow.
Right? How come you didn't talk to me on the phone? I saw you posting on Facebook, so you weren't doing nothing. Well, I work at a social media company. That's my job. Right. I mean, it all depends on the context. But really, I mean, social media has become, I tell people to look at social media. When I'm teaching somebody new about social media, I say, imagine that you're going to school and you're in a playground. Mm-hmm. Remember when you went to high school or elementary school and you're in a playground? Right. And you're talking with your friend or your friends across the way at the swings. Mm-hmm. You're working your way over. You're talking to them, yelling at them. You want to play softball? You want to do this? And everybody else around can hear you talking about it. If they choose to listen, they do. If not, they don't. But you're just talking in a social environment to one person. Mm-hmm. And that's social media to me. And what happens in the playground when you want to talk privately to somebody? You go and get them and you take them, you talk privately. Mm-hmm. That's an inbox. Mm-hmm.
But I think it kind of takes away from just communication.
Well, it does. It does. And I mean, technology, sometimes you make things a little bit too easy. Mm-hmm. And that's why you have to go back to old school, you know. It just matters.
One of the things that I've observed, and this is just being out and about, I see couples just out and about, maybe at dinner, at lunch, or just sitting in the park or doing whatever they're doing, but not really communicating. They're both on their phones, like sitting at the table. Right. At a restaurant, I just sit and I watch. Mm-hmm. And they may have looked up at each other like once or twice. Right. But they're in their phones. Like,
yeah. I mean, that they don't have that intimacy. Right. You know, and so it's an easy way out. Mm-hmm. It really is. Mm-hmm. I know that I know some people that they make a rule and say, we're not going to deal with our phones at dinner. Mm-hmm. We're not going to deal with our phones at a meal. We're at a meal, phone just goes off right away. And that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. They're not going to make a deal about communication. They're not going to make a deal about giving up some of their intimacy. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes in whether you're having dinner or whether you're making love. What is it that you're going to allow yourself to put up with? And why are you doing that? You know.
So for my listening audience, I hope you're taking notes and just making note of things that we're talking about. Maybe you have identified some things that you need to work on or may want to kind of explore within your relationships. Doesn't necessarily have to be intimate. It can be platonic, because all relationships, there is some sort, a degree of intimacy in them. So just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Definitely. But I think to the heart of it, since we are talking sex and intimacy, I do think that if we look at that for a moment, what is a deal maker when it comes to sex? If somebody is demanding what they want in bed, and they're not concerned about what the other person needs, well, they're trying to make a deal. And if you allow that to go on, you will be unsatisfied in your sexual relations. You won't have the meaningful experience that you probably deserve, and they will. That's a compromise. So you don't have to accept that. If there are certain positions you don't like, there are certain times of the day you don't like. I mean, if you're not a morning person, don't agree to morning sex.
Right. But then that's where the compromise comes in, the deal maker, because they feel like,
exactly,
well, I have to do this to keep this relationship.
And now you lose interest in it. And so now in the evening time, when that's really normally your time when you want to do something, you're sitting there watching Judge Judy because you said the store is closed. Yeah, frustrated because you haven't done things the way you want to do them.
Right.
And meanwhile, you yelling at the TV, guilty,
yelling at the kids if they're around.
Yeah. Or posting on social media. I can't stand this, and I got to change something in my life. This ain't working right.
Right.
And all you had to do is flip the clock and say, instead of bothering me at 7 a.m., bother me at 7 p.m. We got something we can work with now. You know what I mean?
Identify that frustration.
Yeah. I mean, because that's being a deal maker, and sometimes you have people that we talked about a lot of different things last week, whether it was toys or experimentation, all that different type of stuff. But if it goes against your principles or it goes against your comfort level, don't do it. And say out loud, I don't want to do this. And the other side of it is, if there are things that you want that
the other person can't or won't provide.
Go back to that. I need your help, please. I cannot feel as good as I want to feel without your help. That's why it's two of us.
Right.
All right. For those of you out there listening, I said two, not three. Stay with
Please
two.
Please be clear on that.
Stay with two.
Two. Dos.
It's important, though, that people understand your intimacy will be heightened if you allow the other person to understand how to raise that height up for you. And then also, sometimes I think it's almost an aphrodisiac for some people if you're strong about what you want and you're strong about what you don't want. I mean, I like assertiveness personally. Well, I like being around assertive people. My personality is such that if you're a wallflower, you're going to stay on the wall. Because I'm not that guy.
Thus wallflower. Right?
You know what I mean? I'm not that guy. You have to speak up. If you don't like something, tell me.
Let me know.
I will back down if you say this is not what you like, because.
But in doing that, would you then become a deal maker?
No, I think not if it's something that I was just exerting from myself and I didn't take into account the other person. Now, if I hear what they want and then I don't want what they want and I say, okay, we'll do that, then you're making a deal. Then you're becoming a deal maker. But if you say, I want this, and I say, well, I wanted that, okay, we need to come to agreement, because right now neither one of us is getting anything. Right. Well, it doesn't have to be a compromise of we both give up something. We can create something new. Okay. Right? Right. All right. You're a morning person. I'm an evening person. We both up at noon. Oh yeah, noon's a good time for me. Sure, it's on. All right.
But isn't that still?
That's finding a middle ground.
Okay.
And I talked to somebody.
What is the difference between middle ground?
Well, a middle ground is where a middle ground to me.
Okay.
Is collaboration.
Okay.
So let me use that word.
Got you.
So the difference between cooperation is when one person is settling for less than what they deserve or truly want. Collaboration is where each of you get together, figure out what's important, and find out what you can do that can meet what's important for both of you. Okay. We don't have to settle when we collaborate.
Gotcha.
Okay. That's a collaboration to me. And when you do that, that is what I mean when I say find that middle ground. Find that path that we can both walk without hurting our feet.
So again, just going back to what we talked about on the first episode, it all boils down to communication and being truthful.
It does.
About not only what you want or what you desire, but what you will or will not do.
Yeah. And truthful to the other person, but first truthful to yourself. Yeah. Because if you're not truthful to yourself at first, how are you going to even be able to express to the other person? Because you're already lying to yourself. So you're not going. It's nothing you're going to put out of your mouth that really is evident of how you feel and what you need. So I've talked to so many people over the past 4 or 5 days that heard the interview, and outside of the Krispy Kreme. That seemed to hit home for a lot of people.
Well.
But a lot of them said, you know what? It made me really think about, what do I actually want? And have I missed signs of intimacy from my partner that they were sending me? And I didn't realize it. Because when we talked about what sex and intimacy was, a number of people said to me, you know what? My man's actually more intimate than I thought he was. Or my wife is more intimate than I thought she was. Because they had not ever thought about intimacy could be characterized as that touch in the back. You know, it could be characterized as that extra look that you get when everybody else gets a glance and you get a second look.
Right.
All of those things are around that. When you're laughing with somebody, you share a special moment. Just you laugh a little bit harder than the other people because you've connected. Right. Those are all signs of intimacy. And so I had one person said, you know, I didn't realize how intimate my husband had been with me.
So she missed the cues.
She missed the cues. And now that she saw the cues, she gave him a big hug. We happened to all be around each other. She gave him a big hug, and he kind of looked and said, I'm usually the one that gives hugs.
Right.
And she said, I know. We got to change that.
Wow.
That was deep.
That was.
Yeah. He usually initiates the hugs. And she gave him one. And you should have saw how he trying to be cool because I was there. But it was clear that it meant a lot to him. Shoot. Yeah. He was like, man, you need to go home.
Well,
I knew that was right. I get kicked out all the time from you guys.
Stage left.
Yeah. Tired of getting kicked out. That's why y'all got 8 kids. No, I'm just kidding.
Lord. But that's good though. So just being able to realize the things that you might be overlooking can prevent.
There's probably much more intimacy around you than you realize from the people that matter.
Right.
And once you open your eyes to it, you know, anybody out there that's bought a new car, I mean, a real new car, like the real smell, not the stuff you just spray in it.
Right.
They know when they drive off the lot, in the next week or so, they see more of that type of car than any other time.
That is true.
Because their eyes have been opened up. They just, now their brain registers to that particular stimuli and says, that's what we have. Imagine if you did the same thing once you open your eyes to the intimacy that's being displayed by your partner. And now the next day you wake up and you see it more than you ever
with
had
fresh
before.
Eyes.
Your stimuli is matching it now. Yeah. So I think that that's something that is big, and I think a lot of times, and it's an interesting way to look at it, when you're being yourself, your authentic self, do you truly use intimacy and sex in a meaningful way, or do you hide behind it?
Wow.
You know, do you say, oh, well, you know, we're together, we're in the eyes of, you know, of God, we've made these vows, but that's good enough. That's enough. Everything else I don't have to do.
So what's the best way to address that when that happens?
Well, I think that when it comes to, you know, pleasuring each other, I think you have to be understanding that if you are truly wanting to have that intimacy, it's not something that's relegated to where you are in your faith. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Well, speaking on that, as Christian couples often have a serious misunderstanding of sex and intimacy and hide behind their faith and close their eyes to pleasuring each other.
Right. So if they're looking at it from the standpoint of, we don't have to do that, I don't think that's true. I think I hear preachers say all the time from the pulpit, and I can't quote the word like that, but I know that they say that when a man and a woman are together, you're there to make each other completely happy in all aspects of happiness, not just some. So why is sex and intimacy taken off the table?
It shouldn't be, but part of that connection should be, part of intimacy is, well, for me, I can only speak for me, is being able to look into that other person's eyes, you know, when we're being intimate. So I don't get the closing.
Yeah, but the reality is that if you're married to somebody, sex should be a part of the marriage. Yes. It should be. And intimacy, as we said, comes. Well, but that's the point. Right. If somebody says, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that because, and they hide behind their faith. That's why they're not doing it. We're already man and wife. That's enough. And that's not right. And there's an issue where somebody's making a deal.
That is a deal maker, but
it'd be a deal breaker on my side, but it is what people make a deal. We went back a week in time because that's a deal breaker for me.
But if they're truly trying to use their faith, then that's not even really a part of the faith, because in the word it talks about only depriving one another for a certain time for a specific reason. I'm not going to go into the specifics of that scripture because I can't think of it right now, but basing it on that is really baseless because that's not true.
Yeah, I don't think anybody should hop in. And somebody educated me. Give a shout out to Colleen Diedenbach. She was talking to me about, we have to be very careful when we're talking about faith and not getting that confused with people acting out of their religion. And she made a very good point to me saying, when you're talking about the topics that you're talking about, understand that there are people of faith that are hearing you as well as people that are just in their religion.
Gotcha.
And I think what you're talking about
is religion.
Is people in their religion. Because I think people of faith understand that God created us in his image, and everything he's given us, he gave us for a reason.
Right.
And I do believe he wants us to have fun procreating. And I also believe he wants us to be perfect. And so that means you got to practice.
Well, practice makes permanent, right?
Practice makes something. So, that's real. It's real.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I when you're asking me that question, all I think about is it comes back to if you really want to be happy with each other, and whether it's a relationship that you're in beginning stages, you're dating, you're in a long-term relationship, you're married, lifelong companions, whatever it looks like for you, the sex and intimacy is not a token to be bargained with. It's not leverage in the relationship. Okay. It shouldn't be used as leverage. You do this and then we do that.
In
That's
some
not
relationships,
right.
that is.
It is, but I don't believe it should be. And it should be very clearly stated what you will and what you won't accept from the other or give from yourself. And once you understand what the other person wants, you attempt to authentically give it to them, because that's a part of being. If we're in a relationship, we gave our vows or we've decided that we're going to be committed to each other, I'm committing myself to submit that you will be the one that gives me all the pleasure I need.
Exactly.
Right?
All right.
I mean, that's being submissive in a way. I submit to you and you submit to me. I'm saying all the needs that I have, you got. You say you got my back, you got it. And it should be like that on both sides. Well, sex and intimacy is a part of that.
Well, so if needs are not being met, then there needs to be a conversation.
It does, because that's where people go somewhere else, because they say, well, I signed up for this and you decided you're taking this off the table. And that means I'm going to another table.
So, Mr. Anthony, you say that understanding your worth and what you bring to the relationship is crucial in understanding what you will and won't accept in a relationship. What happens when both of us don't really understand what we're worth and needs aren't met?
I think it's trouble. Yeah, it's going to be, how the Bernie Mac say, it's going to be trouble.
Trouble.
Jingling, baby, jingling. It's going to be trouble, because if neither one of us has a sense of our worth, and I am just a lay person, but I think that's where you need to go into professional help, counseling, talking
separately or together or both.
I think whatever works. I believe personally, and I've been through counseling before. I think counseling works best when you do it separately to get to a certain point and then together. Okay. That's just from my personal experience. But I think if you're having a problem together, you're not going to be able to solve it right away together. You need to kind of cool down and get back and things like that. But if you don't really understand, how are you going to make something? How are you going to make anything if you don't even understand what you're making? It's like somebody saying to you, make me a souffle, and you've never known what a souffle is. How are you going to make it?
There's called Google.
But you understand what I'm saying? And it'd be nice if it was that easy for somebody to Google intimacy in their relationship. You know what I'm saying? If you don't understand what you're trying to make with the other person, and don't even have a sense of what ingredients it's going to take to make that, where do you get the ingredients from? The other person. This is what I need in our intimacy. This is what you say you need in intimacy. Can we make this together?
And if we can't.
But I mean, to answer your question, though, if we don't even understand what our respective ingredients are, whatever we're going to make is just going to be a mess. It's not going to taste good, feel good, or be good for either one of us.
So in that instance, do you think there's hope?
I think there's always hope. Ever since Jesse said it, there's hope. But, and a lot of people know I love stand-up,
right.
One of the things that some people hope and some people wish. I hope the relationship works. Somebody say, I wish you would, Yeah.
Okay. So are toys fair game in sex and intimacy? And if so, how should couples address it, especially people of faith?
I don't understand why people of faith would need to address it differently. Your faith is your faith. That's you and God and how you express your love of the Lord. So what difference does it make? So if toys are what work for you, get those batteries. Well, Sam's Club, get a big old pack. You make sure you don't ever run out. Baby, we running low on boom batteries.
Let me go get some more.
You understand what I'm saying? If it's hopefully,
well,
and then hopefully you buy more than once a year. That pack done lasts us since 1980. No. Look, anything is fair game in sex and intimacy as long as both people are willing to play that game.
So I guess that would be, you mentioned earlier about the difference between faith and religion.
Right.
So people with that mindset.
Yeah, and I just think simply put, just to keep myself out of any muddy waters, your faith, I don't know anywhere in anything that I've ever heard or learned about faith that it puts any type of limitations or restrictions on how you love someone else. I have not seen it. I just haven't seen it. Right. And I don't think anybody's ever expressed that. So if you're true in your faith, what do you have to worry about? I listened to Bishop McLaughlin said a point today. He said, well, if you do things the right way, you shouldn't be worried about who calls you. Shouldn't be worried about who knocks on your door. Ain't nothing to worry about because you're doing it right. So if you live in your faith right, what you worried about? I don't think, he's not going to say anything about that's your thing. You get it, use it, have fun with it. If it's with the person that's right for you and y'all both agree to it, how has that affected your faith with God?
Well, and I hope that comment has set some people free. I like that, Mr. Bowe.
I hope so too. It just doesn't make sense to me why there's even a correlation between those two. And I think if somebody's doing that, then maybe they're not talking about their faith so much. They're wrapped in their religion maybe a little bit more than they should be. But I know, I'm sure that there are plenty of preachers and pastors and evangelists out there that have a healthy intimacy and a healthy sex life. And probably if you ask them, they say, yeah, that's what they want and I want. That's what we do.
Well,
I don't think they put any restrictions on it.
Right.
That's why they happier in the pulpit than you are sitting there in the pew.
Because they're in faith and you're in religion.
There it is.
Well,
how they say that part?
That part right there.
Yeah. So, I hope that makes sense for people. Go ahead.
So if you had to, what would you leave with our listening audience if there's somebody out there that's encountering that question, sex, intimacy, deal maker, if they've not understood, or maybe they're coming to the understanding that they have made some deals that they really had not consciously wanted to make, what would you say to them?
Well, I think that you have to look at it, and if after the first episode you realize there was some deal breakers in your relationship, and now you're sitting there looking and saying, well, who made the deal? Did they make the deal and I accepted, or did I make the deal and they accepted it? And do you want the deal to end? There's some people listening to this saying, yeah, it's a deal in ours and I'm fine with it because it's on their side.
Right.
But is that what you really want? So what matters to you? Is it the relationship that matters or just you? All right. Because let's not get it twisted. There are some people out there that are selfish in their relationship.
Well,
And if that's the case, I'm sure everybody's listening to this. All right. It's not just people that are all well-rounded and everything. There's some people listening to this that they are about self. And there are other people that are listening to this that are so much not about self. They need to start to reinvent themselves and revalue themselves. And so I would say to that person, understand what side of that fence you're on. I can't do too much for the people that are out there making the deals. That's on you, and that's between you and yours on what you do. But those that are on the side where you realize you've accepted a deal, you need to think to yourself, are you ready to end that deal and create a new deal that is better for both of you?
That is something to think about. That was a good question. So, Mr. Anthony M. Butler.
Yes.
For those that have heard both episodes and may want to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
The best way to reach out to me would be through email, and they can go to abutler, ABUTLER, E3 @gmail.com. That's my direct personal email.
Okay.
And then for those that are interested in what I do on a professional level, they can visit e3businessgroup.us, E3 businessgroup.us, as in United States. And they can find us on Facebook. And if they email, then I'll follow up as far as the phone calls and things like that.
Okay.
And if people like what they're hearing, I ask for them to consider finding out more about the Call of Eagles.
Okay.
And the Call of Eagles is a weekly accountability call that we do that touches upon a lot of different aspects. And if they email me, I'll give them information on that. But the Call of Eagles is changing lives globally. And we're looking at topics that impact, whether they're in business, whether they're career professionals or advocates. So that would be the best ways to reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anthony M. Butler, for coming out and sharing both Sex and Intimacy Deal Breakers and Sex and Intimacy Deal Makers. For my listening audience, you have heard it raw and uncut. Yeah. So I hope that you've had some takeaways that you can apply, some things that will give you some things to kind of ponder on. I've definitely learned some things.
As have I.
Right. Yes, ma'am. And so as far as the Call of Eagles, I wanted to put a quick plug in there. It will definitely keep you accountable. I am on the Call of Eagles, and though I am fairly successful, but being accountable and listening to some of the topics that Mr. Butler talks about has definitely taken me and is taking me to a whole nother level of not just accountability, but a whole nother level of leadership, not just within my business, but within the community, and a whole nother level of personal as well as professional development. So if you're looking to grow, then you would definitely want to make an investment in the Call of Eagles and check it out and listen to it. It's available on the website to listen to a preview. So download the 180 Radio Now app on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Just search for 180 Radio Now. We can be heard on every major internet radio outlet, TuneIn, iTunes Radio, Streama, radio.com, and more. Hit me up on facebook.com/Michelle Speaks, and that is Speaks with a Z. I want to thank you, our national and international listeners, for joining us. You've been listening to Michelle Speaks with me, your host, Michelle Portier. Today was the second part of our two-part series, Sex and Intimacy Deal Makers, with my friend and special guest, Mr. Anthony M. Butler, Sr., International Director and founder of E3 Business Group. We're on every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on 180radionow.com. And if you missed this show or any of our previously aired shows, you can go to 180radionow.com and click on the podcast link to access the podcast directory 24/7. Look for the Michelle Speaks show logo and click it to get the access. It is my prayer that what you have heard today has blessed you. Join us again and let's get to the truth of the matter. And remember, if you hide it, you can't heal it.